had issues with the closed nature of the development process and also the growing influence of the Bitcoin Foundation, which was largely a corporate-funded body a corporate organization to fund developers. I mean, if you're used to making your own software, working on your own project, right? You just do stuff, But this was bigger than that already, and so it kind of became problematic. And so one of the things that Amir did was he started the BIP system, right? So BIP, Bitcoin Improvement Proposals, was modeled after Python Improvement Proposals, the PIP system, from what I understand. And he wrote BIP 1, created the system, and somehow it took hold and survived. And Bitcoin obviously needed some way to open this discussion up, and that's what that was really about. So there was that, but there was also LeBitcoin. LeBitcoin was, so Amir recognized pretty early that without another implementation of Bitcoin, the fact that it was open source or the discussions were open wouldn't really matter in the end, because the people who held the keys to the repo would drive the discussion. But not only from a control perspective, but from a knowledge perspective. If nobody else is doing it, then there's no kind of potential other opposing point of view. So, for example, Tom mentioned I was a Microsoft architect. I didn't start off there. I sold my company to them, and then I did a couple years, right? But one of the things that they have quite a bit of experience with is developing developer APIs. It goes back to their founding, right? And you really can't develop an API without customers. You need multiple customers, and you can kind of project that into more modern times where we have like the IETF things, where you've got different companies, which means different products that are competing over the things that they want to achieve, and they're coming to agreement voluntarily on protocol decisions. If you've only got one, what does that mean, right? Now, Bitcoin, what we now call Bitcoin Core, which I've never been a fan of the name, because it was kind of, I see it as kind of a power grab. We called Bitcoin development, we called it core development, right? And the app was called Bitcoin, or Bitcoin D, or the Satoshi client.
That's a lowercase c, right?
Right. So
rather than the brand Bitcoin
right.
Core uppercase C, so, it would be core development in an open source project.
Right. So at some point, the team decided to rebrand the application from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Core. Maybe it needed a rebrand, but basically, you can see it's a pretty transparent kind of power grab to say, well, this is core development, right? Core development was bigger than Bitcoin, but is now Bitcoin Core. It was bigger than Bitcoin D. It included LibBitcoin and then other applications and other things that are not necessarily nodes. There's a lot that goes into core development, but there's some boundary around what we call core development that has to do with, kind of the infrastructure of Bitcoin. Kind of like you might think of it as what's internet development. It's really routers, right? That's what makes the internet. Everything else is network development.
So, to be fair, just real quick there was a reason behind it, right? It wasn't, we could call it a power grab, but if you look at the historical context, what was happening around the block size wars, there was a lot of fractures that were occurring with Bitcoin Unlimited, Bitcoin Classic, all of these things. So that there was an intentional move to, I guess, there was a consolidation.
Well, as I said, there was a need. There was a legitimate need, I think, for a rebrand, because Bitcoin itself as a brand was spreading to kind of other chains. And I don't necessarily think that means that the Satoshi client needed a rebrand, but if you were going to do something, you're kind of saying this is Bitcoin, right? This is the original whatever. But core refers to the center of Bitcoin, right? And the center of it is this. It's kind of like, again, on the internet, router development, right? Developing router software. There's not one router implementation for the whole internet. There's a lot of them, right? And that is core internet development. And that's kind of the way I think of Bitcoin. So the rebrand, it led to people believing that the only core development in Bitcoin is Bitcoin Core, which was, I think, intentional. So there's always been this tension, even before the rebrand, right, between other implementations of Bitcoin and Satoshi's what I call prototype, right? There are many people who believe there should only be one implementation. Satoshi at one point even said this, he didn't think it would work if there'd be more than one. But there are more than one, so he's wrong. Right?